Document Part 1. The year was 2147, and Earth had finally found peace, or so it seemed. For decades, humanity lived under a fragile agreement with the Valith, an alien race whose sleek ships and glowing forms were as mysterious as they were powerful. The pact allowed humans to rebuild after centuries of war and environmental collapse. It gave them access to advanced technology and resources from other worlds. But trust was never easy, especially when one side came from beyond the stars. Jason Carter stood on the balcony of his apartment in New Chicago, staring at the skyline. The city glimmered under artificial sunlight, its towering buildings repaired and repurposed thanks to materials provided by the Valith. Jason wasn't sure how he felt about their help. He worked as a diplomat, tasked with keeping relations between humans and aliens stable. Yet every time he met with the Valith ambassador, Kelrin, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Still brooding, a voice called from behind him. Jason turned to see Laura Bennett walking into the room. She carried a tablet, filled with data streams and reports. Her sharp green eyes scanned the information as she spoke. "You know, pacing won't make the answers come faster." "I'm not pacing," Jason replied, though he realized he'd been moving back and forth without noticing. "Just thinking." Laura raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "The missing outpost again." Jason nodded. A small mining colony near the border zone had vanished without warning. No distress signal, no debris, just silence. At first, the Valith dismissed it as an asteroid collision or mechanical failure, but whispers among human colonies suggested otherwise. Stories spread about strange lights in the sky and ships disappearing without explanation. Some even claimed the Valith were experimenting on humans, breaking the rules of the pact. "We need to investigate," Jason said firmly. "If there's even a chance the Valith are involved, we can't ignore it." Laura sighed, but didn't argue. As a xenobiologist, she had spent years studying the Valith. She believed most of them wanted peace, but recent events made her question that belief. "Fine," she said. "But if we're doing this, we do it carefully. If the Valith catch wind of us poking around, things could get messy." The next day, Jason and Laura boarded the Eclipse, a sleek exploration vessel commanded by Captain Ryan Mitchell. The ship hummed softly as it left Earth's atmosphere, heading toward the last known location of the missing outpost. The journey took 2 days, during which tension hung thick in the air. Crew members exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what they might find. When they arrived, the scene was eerie. The outpost floated silently in space, its exterior battered, but intact. There were no signs of life or death. Jason led a team inside, their footsteps echoing through empty corridors. Everything looked untouched, yet there was an unsettling feeling, like they weren't alone. Then Laura noticed something odd. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. They weren't human, and they certainly weren't part of any known Valith language. "What is this?" she whispered, running her fingers over the markings. Before anyone could answer, alarms blared. The crew scrambled to secure the area, but it was too late. A shadow moved outside, the windows a massive shape darting past the outpost. Whatever it wasn't friendly. Jason clenched his fists. Something big was happening here, something far worse than anyone imagined. And as much as he wanted to believe the Valith weren't responsible, doubt gnawed at him. The pact that held humanity together might already be cracking, and if it shattered, the consequences would be unimaginable. Document Part 2. The shadow outside the outpost moved again, faster this time. Its shape was jagged and unnatural, unlike any ship Jason or Laura had ever seen. The crew of the Eclipse scrambled to gather their equipment, but fear rippled through them. Whatever was out there wasn't just observing, it was hunting. "Get back to the ship," Captain Ryan Mitchell barked over the comms. His voice was calm but firm, a stark contrast to the panic building among the team. Jason hesitated, his eyes locked on the glowing symbols etched into the walls. They seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. He couldn't leave without understanding what they meant. Laura grabbed his arm. Jason, we don't have time for this. If that thing attacks, I know, he interrupted, pulling away gently. But these markings could tell us who or what did this. Reluctantly, Laura helped him snap a few images of the symbols with her scanner. The device hummed softly as it processed the data, but before it could finish, a loud crash echoed through the outpost. Something heavy had struck the outer hull. We need to go. Now. Ryan's voice crackled urgently in their earpieces. The team bolted toward the airlock, their boots clanging against the metal floor. As they ran, the lights flickered and dimmed, plunging the corridors into near darkness. Shadows danced along the walls, making it hard to tell whether they were alone. Jason glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see something following them, but the hallway behind them remained empty for now. When they reached the airlock, the sight outside stopped them cold. A massive alien vessel loomed nearby, its surface covered in spiky protrusions that looked more like teeth than armor. It wasn't Valeth design. Even Laura, who had studied their ships extensively, didn't recognize it. What is that thing? One of the crew members whispered, his voice trembling. Before anyone could answer, a piercing screech filled the air. The sound vibrated through their bones, forcing them to cover their ears. Then, without warning, the unknown ship fired. Bright beams of energy lashed out, striking the Eclipse. The smaller vessel shuddered under the impact, its shields holding but barely. We're hit, Ryan shouted. Everyone, get aboard. We're leaving. Jason and Laura sprinted toward the Eclipse, dodging debris as explosions rocked the area. Once inside, they strapped themselves into their seats as Ryan maneuvered the ship away from the outpost. Behind them, the mysterious vessel gave chase, its weapons firing relentlessly. The crew braced themselves as the ship shook violently, alarms blaring throughout the cabin. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ryan managed to jump into hyperspace. The pursuing ship vanished as the Eclipse entered the safety of faster-than-light travel. For a moment, everyone sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Laura broke the quiet first. That wasn't Valeth tech, she said, her voice low. Whoever attacked us isn't working with them. Jason nodded slowly. Then who are they? And why did they target us? Back in the lab section of the ship, Laura analyzed the scans she'd taken of the outpost. She focused on the strange residue she'd collected from the walls. Under the microscope, it looked like nothing she'd ever seen, a bizarre mixture of organic material and metallic particles. As she ran further tests, her expression grew darker. This is a fusion, she murmured, almost to herself. Human DNA mixed with something else, something alien. Jason leaned closer, his brow furrowing. You're saying someone or something combined human biology with alien matter? Yes, Laura replied, her voice tight with unease. And not just combined it, they engineered it. This wasn't an accident. The implications weighed heavily on both of them. If the attackers were experimenting on humans, then the fragile peace between Earth and the Valeth might already be doomed. Jason clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Whoever was behind this had crossed a line, and they needed answers. But as the Eclipse hurtled through space, neither Jason nor Laura realized how much worse things were about to get. The symbols they'd found weren't just warnings, they were invitations. And someone, somewhere, was waiting for them to respond. Document. Part 3. The Eclipse drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space, its crew shaken but alive. The attack had left them all on edge, and tension filled the air, like a storm waiting to break. Jason sat in the ship's small meeting room, staring at the table as Laura explained her findings to the others. The residue I found isn't natural, she said. pointing to a holographic display of this strange material. It's part human and part something else. Something alien. Her voice wavered slightly, betraying the unease she felt. Whoever did this was trying to create something a hybrid, and they succeeded. Captain Ryan Mitchell crossed his arms, his face grim. You're saying someone is experimenting? On humans, using us like lab rats? Laura nodded. That's exactly what I'm saying. But it's worse than that. These hybrids aren't just experiments, they're weapons. Look at how fast that ship moved. It wasn't normal. Whatever attacked us wasn't built, it was grown. Jason leaned forward, his jaw tight. If the Valeth are behind this, then the pact is over. They've been lying to us from the start. Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared throughout. The ship. The crew rushed to their stations as the Eclipse dropped out of hyperspace. Ahead of them loomed another alien vessel larger and more menacing than the one that had attacked them earlier. Its surface shimmered with shifting colors, giving it an almost organic appearance. They're hailing us. The communications officer announced nervously. Put it through, Ryan ordered. A figure appeared on the main screen, but it wasn't Valeth. This creature looked humanoid, yet its skin glowed faintly, and its eyes burned with an unnatural light. Its voice came through, distorted, like static, mixed with whispers. Humans, it began, you have trespassed where you do not belong. Jason stepped closer to the screen, his heart pounding. Who are you? What do you want? I am Xylos, the figure replied. I lead those who reject the lies of the Valeth Council. Your kind has been deceived. The pact you cherish is nothing but a tool to control you to prepare you for extinction. The room fell silent. No one knew whether to believe him or not, but his words struck a nerve. If the Valeth Council truly planned humanity's destruction, then everything Jason and Laura had worked for was a lie. What proof do you have? Jason demanded. Silo smirked, or at least, it looked like a smirk. Come aboard my ship. See for yourselves. Or die here, clinging to your ignorance. Ryan glanced at Jason. This could be a trap. It probably is, Jason admitted. But we don't have a choice. If he's telling the truth, we need to know. After a tense discussion, the team agreed to board Xylos's ship. Armed with stun rifles and scanners, they crossed over through a narrow docking tube. Inside, the atmosphere was oppressive, thick, with an unspoken menace. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, as though the ship itself were alive. Xylos greeted them personally, flanked by other beings who shared his eerie glow. He gestured for them to follow him deeper into the vessel. As they walked, Laura whispered to Jason, "Do you trust him?" "No," Jason replied without hesitation. "But we need answers. And if he's lying, we'll deal with it." Finally, Xylos led them to a massive chamber filled with rows of glass tanks. Inside each tank floated grotesque creatures, part human, part alien, their forms twisted and writhed, suspended in some kind of liquid. Laura gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. These are the hybrids." Xylos nodded. "The Valeth Council created them to replace you, to erase humanity entirely." Jason clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. Why show us this? Why not just kill us? "Because I need allies," Xylos said simply. "Together, we can stop the Council, or you can refuse and die when their plan succeeds." The choice weighed heavily on Jason and Laura. Trusting Xylos meant allying with an enemy, but refusing meant walking away from the truth and possibly sealing humanity's fate. Document Part 4, Back on Earth. The news of the Eclipse's disappearance sent shockwaves through the global community. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by fear and uncertainty. People gathered in streets and squares, demanding answers from their leaders. In New York, Senator Ellen Dawson stood before a crowd of angry citizens, her voice rising above the chaos. "We cannot sit idly while our people vanish without explanation," she declared, her tone sharp and commanding. "The Valeth have betrayed us. They've broken the pact, and now they must pay." Her words ignited cheers from the crowd, but not everyone agreed. Across the room, Senator Daniel Hayes shook his head, his expression troubled. He stepped forward, raising a hand to quiet the crowd. "We don't know what happened to the eclipse," he said firmly. "Rushing to war will only make things worse. We need proof before we act." Ellen shot him a glare. "Proof? How much more do we need? Ships are disappearing, colonies are being attacked, and you want us to wait for an invitation to fight back?" Daniel didn't back down. "War won't bring the eclipse back. It won't fix anything if we're wrong about who's responsible. If we strike first, we risk losing everything we've built." The argument between the two senators reflected the growing divide among humanity. Some called for immediate retaliation, while others urged caution. Amidst the turmoil, a young journalist named Olivia Grant worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. She had spent weeks digging into classified files, piecing together fragments of information that didn't add up. Late one night, as she sifted through encrypted data, she stumbled upon something, a series of documents detailing secret meetings between human officials and Valeth ambassadors. Olivia's hands trembled as she read the contents. The files revealed that Earth's government had known about strange experiments involving human DNA for months. Worse still, they had chosen to cover it up, fearing public backlash. Her heart raced as she realized the implications. If the world found out, it could shatter what little trust remained between humans and aliens. Determined to expose the truth, Olivia contacted Alex Monroe, a skilled hacker she'd worked with before. Together, they devised a plan to broadcast the documents to the entire planet. "If people see this, they'll demand answers," Olivia said, her voice low but resolute. "It's risky, but we can't stay silent." Alex nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he bypassed firewalls and encryption protocols. Within hours, the files were ready to go live. As the data streamed across the globe, billions of people watched in stunned silence. The revelation sparked outrage, protests erupting in cities worldwide. Trust in the government crumbled overnight, replaced by anger and betrayal. Meanwhile, deep within the underground resistance movement, whispers of hope began to spread. Small groups of humans and sympathetic Valeth dissidents started working together, sharing intelligence and resources. They knew that unity was their only chance against the growing threat. Ellen Dawson saw the chaos as an opportunity. Behind closed doors, she secretly reached out to Xylos, the rogue alien leader who had shown Jason and Laura the horrifying hybrids. Through intermediaries, she proposed an alliance, offering Earth's support in exchange for his help in overthrowing the Valeth Council. Though uneasy about collaborating with a former enemy, Xylos agreed. Both sides needed each other to survive. As tensions escalated, humanity prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Factories churned out weapons, and soldiers trained for battle. But amid the preparations, some still clung to the hope of peace. Daniel Hayes worked tirelessly to rally moderates, urging them to push for diplomacy instead of destruction. "If we give in to hatred," he warned, "we become no better than those who seek to destroy us." Yet even as voices of reason struggled to be heard, the storm of war drew closer. Humanity stood at a crossroads, its future hanging precariously in the balance. Document, Part 5. Jason and Laura stood in the shadow of Xylos, their minds racing as they absorbed the horrifying truth. The rows of glass tanks stretched endlessly, each one containing a grotesque hybrid creature, part human, part alien. Their forms twisted and shifted unnaturally, suspended in a glowing liquid that seemed to pulse with life. Laura's hands trembled as she scanned one of the tanks, her device picking up readings that confirmed her worst fears. These are people," she whispered, her voice breaking. Or they were. Someone took them, broke them apart, and rebuilt them into this. Jason clenched his fists, his anger simmering just below the surface. The Valith Council did this. They've been lying to us all along. Zelos nodded, his glowing eyes fixed on them. The Council sees your kind as weak, chaotic, unworthy of survival. These hybrids are their solution, a new species to replace you, stronger, obedient. Laura turned to him, her expression fierce. And what about you? You're Valith too. Why should we trust you? Xylos didn't flinch. Because I have no love for the Council. They rule through fear and deception, crushing anyone who opposes them, including my own kind. If they succeed, billions will die, human and Valith alike. Jason exchanged a glance with Laura. They both knew allying with Xylos was dangerous, but they had no other choice. Without proof of the Council's betrayal, humanity would remain blind to the threat. And if they refused to act now, countless lives would be lost. We'll help you, Jason said finally, his tone firm. But if you're lying, we'll stop you too. Xylos smirked faintly. Fair enough. Follow me. He led them deeper into the ship, past corridors lined with strange machinery that hummed softly. The air grew colder, heavier, as they approached a massive door reinforced with alien alloys. It slid open with a hiss, revealing a control room filled with glowing panels and holographic displays. At the center of the room stood a large console connected to the facility's central AIA, towering structure that pulsed with light. This is the heart of the operation, Zelos explained. The AI controls everything, the hybrids, the experiments, the data. Destroy it, and you cripple the Council's plans. Laura stepped forward, studying the console. If we take it down, we can expose the truth. But how do we get the information back to Earth? Jason frowned. We don't. Not unless someone stays behind to transmit it. The weight of his words hung in the air. Staying behind meant certain death. The facility was rigged to self-destruct. If the AI was disabled, a fail-safe to protect the Council's secrets. Yet, without the data, humanity might never believe the extent of the betrayal. I'll do it, Laura said suddenly, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. You and Xylos can escape. I'll make sure the transmission goes through. No, Jason replied sharply. I'm not leaving you here. You don't have a choice, Laura shot back. Someone has to get the truth out, and you're better at keeping people alive than I am. Trust me, Jason. Before he could argue further, Zelos interrupted. There isn't time to debate. Decide now, or none of us leave. Jason hesitated, torn between duty and loyalty. Finally, he nodded, his jaw tight. Fine, but we're doing this together for as long as we can. The three of them worked quickly, setting charges around the AI core while Laura prepared the data for transmission. As they moved, alarms began to blare, warning lights flashing red throughout the facility. The Council had discovered their intrusion. They're coming, Xylos growled, his weapon drawn. We need to move faster. Jason helped Laura connect her device to the console, uploading the files even as the sounds of approaching footsteps echoed through the halls. He glanced over his shoulder, expecting to see enemy forces storming the room at any moment. Almost done, Laura muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. Just a few more seconds. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and armed Valith loyalists poured in, their weapons trained on the intruders. Xylos fired first, creating a diversion as Jason shielded Laura. Bullets and energy blasts ricocheted off the walls, filling the air with chaos. Go, Laura shouted, shoving Jason toward the exit. I'll finish it. Jason hesitated, his heart pounding. He wanted to stay, to fight alongside her, but deep down, he knew she was right. With a final nod, he turned and ran, following Xylos into the narrow corridors, as explosions rocked the facility behind them. As they fled, Laura activated the self-destruct sequence, her hands steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. She whispered a silent promise to Jason that her sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. Then, with the data transmitted and the countdown ticking down, she faced the advancing enemies alone, ready to meet her fate.